Hello, welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to learn about Python building function called reverse. Alright, if you are new to this channel, I am Walako. Let's dive right in. Reverse is a Python building function that takes in sequence and return reverse iterator. Examples of sequence that we can talk about are list, string, and also tuple, and as well as range. Right. All right, so before we dive right into the reverse function, how to work with it, we will also talk about two other methods that we can use to reverse data as well. The first method we are going to use is a method that comes from list, right? It's a reverse method. Now, this reverse method that comes from list is only used on list, right? It can be used on string, tuple, or range. Okay, it will only work on list. So let's try that one out and see. Okay, so we'll call on our product type and then call the reverse method on it, and then we can print out the product type list as and see. Okay, so let's go ahead and print it out to our console, and you can see that we have our data being reversed here for us. Now, this method of reversing data is what we call the in-place reverse, right? Now, in-place reverse simply means that we've changed the original state of the data, which means the original state of the data which we have here is being lost. We can't have it back, right? Now, of course, what you can do is you can reverse it back to get that data. Okay, so let's just do that and check. So we can call on the product list again, then call the reverse method on it again. All right, so let's go ahead and print it out. You realize that we'll get the original state of the data again. All right, so let me just clean out the console and then save and run our code. Okay, so we have the reverse copied here. We have the reverse copy here, and also we have the original state here. All right. Okay, so initially I do mention that the reverse method does not really work on string, tuple, and range. Okay, so let's just confirm that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out these ones here, and then let's try working on a tuple of data. So I'll call it data tuple. Okay, let's just so we use parentheses to denote a tuple, right? So 1, 2, 3. All right, so let's just try this one by calling the reverse function on it. Okay, let's print it out, and then first of all let's call the reverse function on it before we print it out. Okay, so call reverse function. All right, so we can therefore print it out. It's a data tuple here. Okay, so now this we should so we have exceptions here, which states that tuple object has no attribute reversed, right? So it means that it can't work on tuple. Okay, so let's comment all these ones and then move on to our next method that we want to use. Let me clean out this space so that we can work on our next method. Right, so our next method we are going to work on is what we call slicing, right? We are going to use slicing notation to reverse our data, right? So let's try that one. Okay, so let's call on our product types, and then we are going to use the slicing notation, which comes with a square bracket. And what we are going to do is you pass in the first argument, which is actually going to be 0. Empty means that we are starting from the index 0 and to the last index of the list, and then reverses from the last index. Okay, so that's what this syntax is going to do to reverse our list for us. Now what it's going to do is it's going to copy the original data and reverse it and return that copy, right? So we need to store it in a variable, and so that we can print it out. Okay, which means that this method will have our original state of the data available for us. Okay, so let me just clean out this space, and then we can run our code. Okay, let's run it again. So we have the reverse copied here. Okay, so we can also print out the original data and see if we still have our original state of the data. Okay, so let's print that one also out. Let me clean the screen and then run the code. Okay, so you see we have the reverse copy, and we also have the original data also as well. Okay, so we can quickly try this method on list, on tuple rather. So let's head on to the tuple section here. Let me uncomment out this data. Then let's try this. So let's try the slicing notation on this one. Okay, so we will pass the slicing notation here. Let me just copy this one and then paste it here. And what I'll do is I'll just store it in a variable called result, and then we are going to print out the result here. Okay, all right, now let me clean out this space, and then we can run it. So you realize that we have our data being reversed, and so this work on tuple and work on list. It's also work on strings. So let's just try a string value. Let me pass in hello. So let's try a string value, and let me pass in hello here and run the code and see. So we have our hello being reversed for us. Okay, so that is how the slicing notation work. Okay, so now let me just clean up this code and let's move on to our main reversed function. See how it works. Okay, so our reverse function, which is this one, actually takes in sequence as an argument and return reverse iterator over the values of the given sequence that we pass in, right? Now what it does is actually create a copy and return that copy in reverse object. So what we need to do is we need to actually store it in a variable, right? And then we can pass in our norms data or list, right? Now let's just print out the result. Okay, so let me clean the console and then let's move on. Okay, so here it's actually return what we call the reverse iterator object, right? So what we need to do something we call typecasting, and then into list we typecast the object into list, and that will give us our actual results that we need. Okay, so let's run it, and you can see we've reversed this data here. Okay, that's good, and that can happen to tuple also as well. The same thing we can do for tuple. So we can store the value in result, and then we convert it to list, and we run our reverse function. Then we pass in our tuple here, right? Okay, and which is actually going to return a list for us, not tuple. Okay, so let's run our code. Sorry, let me comment out this one, and then let me print out our result from here. Okay, that's good. So I'll clean up the console again and then run the code. So you can see that we've reversed the data, our tuple here, right? That's how it works. And let's just try it on, how do we call it, string also as well, so that we can move on to our code challenge for the day, right? So let's try it on string. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear this data here. Okay, then let's declare a variable here called name, and let's pass in mobile phone as the data that we want to reverse. Okay, all right, so the next thing that we are going to do is going to call on declare another variable called result, and we pass in list, and then the reverse will come in because we are doing typecasting. So after the reverse return the iterator object, we need to typecast it into list here. So we will pass in our string data, okay, and that is going to reverse it for us. Now what we are going to, the results we will get is going to be a list of characters, right? So let me just run it so you see it. Okay, so here we have a list of characters here. Now what we need to do is string has a format that called join. It's actually a function that you can actually run it on how do we call it, any object, that any list object that you have, so that you can get a expected format that you want to get. Okay, so now let's just run this one. So you realize that here we have it being returned the way that we want it. Okay, so you can see that the reverse function actually work on tuple, it work on list, it also work on string, right? Good. So now let's head on to our code challenge for the day. Now our code challenge for the day actually is going to be based off on palindrome, right? So we are going to solve a palindrome problem. Okay, so a palindrome is a word, phrase, or a sequence that read the same back as front. Okay, so we have a word like madam, and madam is a palindrome because when you reverse it and you compare it with the original one, it's going to be the same, so it's a palindrome. Okay, so given a phrase x, return true if x is a palindrome. X is a palindrome when it reads the same back as front. Okay, so for example, a madam is a palindrome while sir is not. And in palindrome, white space are not allowed. So it means that we have x here and we have a white space between here, which means that we need to remove the white space, right? So pause this video and go ahead and solve this challenge and come back and see how I will solve it. All right, so you are back. So let's go ahead and solve it. Okay, so the first step that I'm going to take is that I need to remove the space here, and I'm going to use a function called replace from a string module to do that. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do that, and I'm just going to store it in the same variable. Okay, so I'm just going to call the replace on it, and I'm checking if we have a space, a white space in within our our text or whatever data being given to us or sentence being given to us. We are going to remove that one, and then we are going to pass in an empty space. Okay, now the next step that we are going to do is we are going to use the reverse function to reverse our data, right? So let's do that. So you call it result reversed, right? All right, so I'm going to use the reverse function, and what I'm going to do is we know with a reverse function we are going to have a reverse iterator being returned to us, so we need to typecast it into a list. Okay, then after typecasting it to a list, we need to format it. Okay, and so the formatting state, we are going to use join, right, and to format it for us. Okay, so this should reverse our data for us. So the next step we need to take is to compare our result reversed data and against the original one and see if really they are equal. If they are equal, we are going to return true, else we will return false. Okay, so let's go ahead and try out our function that we just defined. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to store it in result, and I'm going to call the is palindrome on it. Then I'll pass in our data, which is x. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to print out the data. Okay, so I'm going to use f string here. Okay, then I'll do string interpolation here by passing our s. So what I will do is I'll just say is x a palindrome. If it is, it's going to return true, s is going to return false, right? Okay. So we pass in our result here. All right, so we are done. Let's just run our code and see if we get the result we are expecting. All right. Okay, let me just comment out this one. I think we have something. Okay, let me just even clean up the code here and try out our code again. Okay, let me clean out the screen and then run it again. So you can see it's necessary run a palindrome. It gives us false. Okay, so let's just change this one to run, and this is going to give us true. So let's run the code again. Okay, so here we have it to be true. Okay, so here we have it to be true. If you find value in this video, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on the video. See you.